Okay, it's been a few days since I've been able to make a long video, and I don't know where to start. I've had a lot of ideas, but I'm going to start right now with this book. I pulled out of storage just to cover it with you. The Tranfer Agreement by Edwin Black. The importance of this book. Well, it's not as important as this book. This is my favorite book. I don't spend enough time reading this. I watched a movie today, and I started watching Italian spaghetti western. It actually was pretty decent, but I had to shut it off. I realized it's a waste of time. So this is the proper name version of the King James Bible. And what this will tell you is that in the book of Isaiah, it'll tell you there are good figs, and there are bad figs. He's referring to the people, the mixture of people at the time. He's talking about basically the good seed and the bad seed. The most important thing about this is that it's a reference to the country of Israel, which Joshua himself went by the fig tree and it had no fruit. And the next day they saw that it withered. And he said something to the effect that you will never, got a nice message that I needed. You will never bear fruit again, meaning the fig tree stood for Israel, never bearing fruit again. So that's not a proper country there. Israel, the country, it will never be established again. Israel, the people, the Israelites are asleep at the wheel, which is why the world is going to get nuked. Unless Israelites wake up, start reading this book, and repent, and start living according to it, and cultivating the Holy Spirit, we will be nuked. You go read the book of Jonah and you will see what I'm talking about. Most people think, well, Joshua referred to as it was in the days of Noah. And everybody figures, okay, so all we need to know is that he was in the belly of the whale, the fish, or whatever it was for 3 days, 3 nights, right? And that's basically how long Joshua was past, or whatever, how long he laid his life down before he picked it back up again. Now, I know I'm getting carried away, but I want you to understand something. There are no good figs. There's Israelites, and some Israelites will be found among the Jews, in the Jewish community, but they are not even a remnant. It's a mere residue, from what I can tell. Now, the big deal is this. And I can't entitle this because I know it'll get flagged if I say this. But Herr Hitler was a father of modern Israel. He founded the first settlement in Palestine for the Jews. Adolf Hitler did that. So he really can be called the father of modern Israel. And this is really kind of a tricky thing to discuss because it's easy to get confused. However, this book, The Tranfer Agreement, written by Edwin Black, who was a Jewish gentleman, he was a young man and he wanted to research this. And he had saved up $5,000, his entire life savings, and he used that to support himself while he wrote this book, The Tranfer Agreement. Now, this is a dry, dull read, but the advantages of it are he gave us details so that if you read carefully and read between the lines, you're going to realize quite a bit. The number one thing you're going to realize is that there were 2 different groups of Jews vying to represent the entire Jewish community to Adolf Hitler and the Reich. They wanted to. These 2 groups wanted to negotiate and represent on behalf of all of the Jews. And the purpose of the negotiations was to secure a transfer agreement so the Jews in Germany, especially the wealthy Jews, could take their funds out of Germany and put them in Israel. And it was kind of a wild deal that they got, because what it amounted to is they couldn't take their money out of the banks. It would have collapsed the German finances. And the only thing they could do, the only thing that they could negotiate with Hitler, was they had to buy German products. German-made products, and take those out of Germany and use those to start Israel in Palestine, to start the grand theft that was going to be happening. So Edwin Black's parents were very upset when their son told them what he was going to write about. They had a fit. Don't you dare write about that. It's not good for the Jews. So he wrote the book, and when he was done with it, his parents approved. And he continued to write other serious works. But this is the most important work he ever wrote. And you can, on YouTube today, see interviews of Edwin Black. He's got kind of a distinguishing characteristic. His jaw moves kind of awkwardly. So you'll know that that's the right guy when you see the jaw. Looks like he's got a problem, and it goes. It's kind of a weird motion. I only watched him for a little bit. But basically, it's a dramatic story of the pact between the Third Reich and Jewish Palestine. So I'm going to get as deep into this as I can. You had two different groups that were vying for the authority to represent the Jews. The Jews declared war on Germany before Hitler took office. That's right. They declared war first. And by the way, they won that war. No, the United States did not win it. We lost the peace for sure. But the Jews won that war. And there was another winner too, which is kind of awkward. And that is the Bolsheviks in Russia, or the USSR, I should say. And also, the Bolsheviks were Jews. Bad figs, for sure. Not the good ones, not the good type. And so Adolf Hitler negotiated with the bad ones. And the reason he did that is because, when you read this book, you'll find out that the bad ones killed the good ones. Jews killed Jews. My Jewish mother, Beatrice, she used to say, if people just need to leave the Jews alone. They'll kill each other off. They fight among themselves. Well, this book is the evidence of that. You have the historical record of the assassination of one group of Jews that was really righteous. Assassination by the bad group. So you need to understand that the synagogue of Satan were the victors, and they were the ones who negotiated with Hitler. And as a result of that, there was a coin printed. And the coin is a very famous coin. You can get them in coin stores. I've been meaning to buy a copy forever. Just never bothered to. But on one side was what they call the Star of David. And it's not the Star of David, because there's no such thing as the Star of David. There never was. It actually was the Star of Remphan, which was on the Rothschilds, the Bauers' red shield on Judenstrasse in Frankfurt, Germany. Their name at that time was Bauer. Now, so the good guys that were good statesmen that wanted to negotiate on behalf of their fellow Jews were murdered, slaughtered. That's what happened. So you had good figs and you had bad figs. And this book details it seriously. And then you had the coin, and it was amalgam. It was an amalgam of the National Socialist Party with the Zionist Internationale. Zionism is wicked. I bought several books, and I don't know what I actually have on my shelf anymore. I bought the books, had them sent home to Mom. She read them first, and then I got them, but I didn't get all the books that I had sent to her. There were some very valuable books that my brother didn't know the value of them. He just tossed them. He didn't ask me. Anyway, NA are the initials for the National Socialist Party. ZI is for Zionist International. And that's what it means. Now, I don't know if I can find this thing right now. I'm going to try to look it up again and see if it'll come up for us. But there was a guy named, I think his name was Heidegger. I'm not really sure. Okay, go to pictures. And I'm just going to put in here, Nazi, because I think this will bring it up. And not yet. I'm looking for his face. I'm used to seeing his face. Hey, there we go. Just put in NA and I saw it flash in front of me. I had to change the name on this file so I could pull it out. Here we go. All right. Nazi. According to Eustace Mullins, Nazi was the amalgamation of the National Socialist Party with the Zionist International of the Jews. You need to understand they worked together on this project, and the Jews exported all kinds of agricultural products, finely made, German-made Mercedes and heavy equipment and pipes. Everything that they needed, they got it out of the country that way. And that's what the deal was. You had to pay for German engineered goods, German-produced goods, and allow the country money to stay in the country, and you could bring the products out. That's what they started. Nazi, quote, a term created by this man, Conrad Hayden, a Marxist Jew, to ridicule the National Socialists in Germany. Today it is used to attack any European who does not hate his race, culture, and history, and who wishes to protect and preserve his own people and children's future. Somebody who opposes enforced mass immigration of non-Europeans into his ancestral homeland. Very important. I don't know if I can come up with another one here for you, but I really should, because this stuff is pretty important. So I will see if I can get rid of this NAZI and go back to things in their proper order. Okay, here we are, and I'm going to move on down. Well, I'm not going to find it probably, and it's a little bit of a distraction, so I will wait on that. But basically, it is a modern rabbi who admits the ancestry for his Jews. I say his Jews. Look, there was no Jewish religion until after 400 AD. That's when they began to codify it. It could not have happened before then. Because of the historical analysis of the language and the styles, it didn't happen until they started to write down the Babylonian Talmud in 400 AD. And from the analysis, they know it was completed before 635 AD. I didn't say BC, I said AD. It's a new religion. And actually what they did is they converted to Judaism in Khazaria, the Kaza, that's the way to say it. The Kaza converted to Judaism because their neighbors said, hey, you've got to stop doing this satanic worship. Otherwise, we're going to take you out. So they were threatened. So they had to convert. And so the leader for the country decided to go with Judaism because the Jews got along with everybody. So he had, Catholics on one side and he had Muslims on the other side, and they were enemies. And if he aligned with one of those two religions, well, then he'd have to deal with the other party. But he saw that the Jews got along well with everybody. So he had his nobles convert to Judaism, but he told them, keep on with the old faith in secret. Don't do it in public anymore. And they were allowed to exist until about 1100 AD, when they were pushed west into Poland and the Baltic states. And that's where you get your Ashkenazi, and I like to call them the Ashkenazis. Okay, because, and you need to understand something. Judaism, as written down in the Babylonian Talmud, is an extremely evil religion. Those rabbis actually justified all kinds of wickedness. It's codified. It's the most evil book on the whole planet, as far as I can tell. Now, so we have the coin, we have the Star of David, which is not, it's the Star of Molech, Star of Remphan, Star of Baal. It's the old religion there. It ain't Jewish. It ain't from King David at all. And then you have National Socialist Party. Now, the National Socialist Party was not as bad as what people say, as what they claim after they rewrote the history books. The Jews or Khazars or whatever they were in the days of old, Canaanites is the right word. From then you get the Edomites. You get Esau, who became known as Edom. You get Edomites. Now, in Genesis, it was the land of Canaan, named after Cain. Cain was fathered by a fallen angel named Gadriel, Gadreel. And Gadriel was one of the 6 leaders of the fallen angels. There were 200 fallen angels, and they conspired. This is the original sin, was a conspiracy by the 200 fallen angels to take all the daughters of men that they wanted for wives. And taking someone to wife didn't mean you took out a license back then. Marriage was just merely the sex act. That was it. So Hitler was the father of modern Israel. I know it sounds pretty weird, pretty twisted. He never did come up with the final solution. That's a false accusation that the Zionists put up on him. Adolf Hitler never came up with the final solution of exterminating the Jews. The Zionists came up with that. And the Zionists also went after their fellow Jews who were not supporting Zionism. They would kill their own people that turned against them. Even the fellow who started that in the conference in the 1880s, 1890s. Oh, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. But he decided to lighten up. But it was too late. The movement he started was off on its own, and they weren't going to change for anybody. So they tossed that fellow to the wayside. And to this day, if somebody actually who's a Jew tells the truth about the Jews, they will do their best to destroy that person's life. It is really bad. We live in the most evil times unimaginable. We're living in the hell that they have given us. They actually are ensconced in all of Western civilization, plus all the way around the planet. They have placed their people in the positions of power in all of the developed nations. They control it and run it all. They, through our Federal Reserve system and our shenanigans, have stolen it all. So America owes a service to the rest of the world, and that service is very simple. We need to kick the bastards to the curb. But there's no safe place to expel them to. You can't just kick them out and it's going to work okay. Not at all. And the Edomites are never going to give up the control. They will nuke us first. They've started all of these wars. And in case you're wondering, they also started all these religions and they control them. They've got their spies and their activists and all of them. All of these man-made religions are controlled by the same group. Now, there's also the Roman citizenry that we have to deal with, the Roman families. And there were 8 Roman senators whose families today are ruling as well in a very major, very large way. This is something I heard recently, is that the Tower of Babel never went away. Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, really hasn't gone away. Today we have Mystery Babylon because it's hard to recognize it. You can't tell where it begins and ends. You cannot understand it because it's like all of the evil that has occurred during this earth age and before this earth age, a lot of that evil has been just brought forward and amalgamated into this synagogue of Satan. So I recommend the Tranfer Agreement. I had a rough time. I think I started this book 3 or 4 times before I pushed my way all the way through it and got through it. And it's an incredible book. I've got mine dog-eared and highlighted, and I know I should go through it again, but it is a really boring read. Extremely boring read. This is the 25th anniversary edition with a afterword by Abraham H. Foxman, New York Times best-selling author of IBM and the Holocaust and War Against the Weak. I do think IBM and the Holocaust and War Against, I think that's a book that I've heard of before. So, you have good figs and bad figs, and here's how we separate them. It's not a good thing. And Israel is an illegal country formed by the Rothschilds, who finally, after dealing with the Tsar and with America, was able to go in and conquer Russia. The November surprise on the railroad cars that were sealed up that crossed over into Russia with gold so they could start that Bolshevik revolution and ultimately murder the Tsar and his family. And there's questions as to whether or not that was done doing a Jewish ritual murder. But I do not like saying Jewish because these are Kaza. These are people who actually worship Satan very secretly, and they seduce other people by having them worship Satan, and they pay them off rather well, especially people in Hollywood, people in Washington, D.C. They're both corrupt, totally corrupt. I don't think there's any saving the country, to be honest with you. Now, don't get me wrong, Yahweh may want that, but I don't see how it's possible, because at this point, Trumpenstein, or whatever you want to call him, he's surrounded himself with Zionists. Washington, D.C. is Zionist-occupied territory. And a lot of people are walking around insisting that we have to believe that Trump is going to save the day. Now, my belief is that, yes, we got him in office. We put the man in office. Now we need to hold his feet to the fire. How do we do that? We repent. We read our Bibles. We cultivate the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit informs each one of us differently. It is a personal relationship. And I think that we have to hold President Trump's feet to the fire and confront him with the fact that he's kissing Bibi Netanyahu's ass. As a matter of fact, I think the message we should tell them is, we don't know who our real president is, Donald. We think it's Bibi. The way you act, it is Bibi. We need to crash their money powers and the system as fast as we can. And I know we don't want to go without food. We don't want to go without electricity. We don't want to end up fighting each other. But at this point, America owes it. We owe it. Our brothers in Russia, and that might not include Mr. Putin. I have a lot of respect for the gentleman, but do I trust him? I don't think so, because I've seen him put on those funny outfits that the secret society people put on. Who knows what's really happened? I watched a video a couple years back. My buddy got to watch it all the way through, and I didn't get to watch it all the way through, and it was taken down. And in that video, they had scenes from Pizzagate, Ashley Babbitt's ambulance ride, and I don't know if this was just stuff that was acted and filmed and just it's a bunch of lies, or if it's actually true. But Ashley Babbitt was in the gurney, and they were talking to her, and she's talking to them, and they're saying, "Are you sure you're comfortable? We want to make sure you're comfortable." So I don't even know if she was really shot. I wasn't there. And of course, any Hollywood producer could have made a video that looked like she was alive on the gurney. That would not be any problem at all. So I don't know who to believe. So if President Trump told me Ashley Babbitt was dead, I would say, "Sir, were you there? How do you know?" I don't trust it. Pizzagate. They had these people doing skits like they were just stirring trouble up, causing confusion. And they were not really doing that stuff, but they were glad to inflame the public, to get our emotions aroused. You need to understand their black magic includes emotional manipulation, which is why the women are so vulnerable to it, because they like to go along with it because they want to do the thing that feels good. We have to strip this government down. And I know you think, well, I want them paying for special education students. I don't want the federal government paying for any education. I don't want them helping out with any education. I want the federal government stripped down in size so it can't brainwash our people again, so it can't control the education system and standardize the text and put their bullshit gibberish out there. Let's talk about the Statue of Liberty, which has got the same face on it as the pictures of Lucifer. And you need to understand, the Statue of Liberty was given to us to enslave us. The bearer of light, Lucifer, is chained. Her foot, his foot, its foot, the transgendered Statue of Liberty's foot is chained to the ground, just like the angels are chained in Tartarus. Let's talk about Tartarus. Does that have anything to do with Tartaria? That vast civilization that once spanned the entire globe with extremely advanced technology and a civilization that was noted for having superior laws to everything we have in this age? Tartaria was in the maps when I was a little boy, along with weird-looking beasts in the ocean. But these are things that have been removed from everything. All of the books, you will not find it. You'll find very few of the maps. I do not agree with the flat Earth people, and I also think the concave Earth, where the Earth is the surface inside, and I guess the sun and the moon are in the middle, that sort of fits in a certain sense. It really does seem like it's realistic. But what I want you to think of is this. There is some evidence that the Earth may be flat. And so stay open-minded to those people that have bought off in that. We just don't know. We don't have good answers. We cannot fly to Antarctica again like Admiral Byrd did. Admiral Byrd reported a lot of undiscovered continents down there and very good climates. And also, Captain Cook in his logs, he logged 50,000 miles sailing around the ice of Antarctica. And I don't know that he actually circumvented the whole thing. If the equator is 25,000 miles and the North Pole is just a spot in the top, and you have 25,000 miles there, if it was flat Earth, then Antarctica would be much more vast, much larger. And we have movies in which they depict things and tell us about the reality. They have to tell us this. It's part of what goes on with them is they're required to tell us, their victims, of what they intend to do. And when we ignore that and just let them do it, it's considered consent. And we don't really give consent, but this is their laws. This is what they do. The earth is owned and maintained by Satan and his children. That's all there is to it. We have a mission, and I believe I know the mission. We are to rise up, take power away from the Kaza. And I think that the Kaza have sealed their fate. How? Why? Because they lied about those camps and about the evil plan of Herr Hitler to kill all the Jews. I lived in Germany as a little boy for 3 years. I didn't want to go there because I watched those black and white videos of Adolf Hitler. I didn't know that they had been tampered with, that they were sped up. Because when I heard the only natural recording of his voice, it was much lower pitch. It was mellifluous. German is not exactly what I call a pleasant, language, but from him it was very pleasant. And so you need to understand that they made him look like a mad dog on purpose. But it's time for us to correct that. And they also claim places like Treblinka, where mass graves are, there ain't nobody buried there. There's not one. They analyzed the doggone ground with some sort of ground radar that went down, I guess it went down 30 meters or 90 meters. It penetrated a long ways, and if there was even a jawbone down there, they would have found it. They didn't find any skeletons. They didn't find anything there. I myself believe, and it's just my hunch, that the bad Jews, the Zionists, the Marxists, were actually in charge of those camps, and they were the ones that ran roughshod over their higher class Jews who were good people. There are good Jews. I do believe that. However, we need to rise up and stop them. They should not be allowed to be in government at all. If they're dual citizens, we should actually take that away from them and kick them out of the country. Just like the bar attorneys. They're not citizens at all. If you read the law properly and understand the proper 13th Amendment, you'll realize they don't belong here. They got us into all this trouble. And they should never be allowed in the medical profession or in the legal profession. I mean, I used to think, well, they make good attorneys. No, they don't. They don't. They're not trustworthy. They're not reliable. They gave us this corrupt legal system. It's not constitutional at all. In about 1964, they stopped with common law pleas, under which a man had his full constitutional rights, and they required the men to plead under statutory law, under this foreign jurisdiction they superimposed upon us. The transfer agreement documents the two different groups of Jews that vied to negotiate with Adolf Hitler, and the bad Jews killed off the good Jews, and they prevailed. And those guys that were over here in our country that were organizing and all that, you might think, well, that's a good thing what they did. No, those were Marxist Jews causing the trouble here. And we have Marxists throughout the entire government, and they're in the positions of power. A lot of them are judges. Some are Supreme Court judges. Earl Warren, Felix Frankfurter. My God, if that man didn't look like an alien, I don't know who does. I mean, if you look at him, he's a little guy with a massive head, and the Jews today are bragging that they are not European, and they're not white, course, they intermingle with everybody, including the Chinese. So you got Chinese Jews. Mao Zedong was a Chinese Jew. So I'm going to see if I can find this and just read this, because this is a rabbi who admitted what they were about. And it should come up pretty soon. But this, I want to be able to quote him. If I can't find it in short order, then I am going to wait, and I will put up a short video on it. And I think you need to hear what he has to say, because it's just horrible what he said. Oh, what is this one here? The Christian cannot. I think this is Mr. Ford. The Christian cannot read his Bible except through the Jewish spectacles, and therefore reads it wrong. Henry Ford. By the way, Henry Ford made most of the engines for the German army. Yeah, we made better engines than they made, so they went with it. Now, they did better with the diesels, and I'm going to take this call. So thank you for tuning in. Yahweh bless.